This video was brought to you by the Slidebean agency. Get the design team behind Slidebean to prepare your slides for just $29 per slide. Link in the description. Imagine you see a video on Instagram. It's Bella Hadid, Emily Ratajkowski, Hailey Bieber, and other elite influencers all having the time of their lives in the Bahamas with beach, concert, party scenes. Even if you don't know it, you want to be there. And this wasn't Dan Bilzerian's craziest, newest extravaganza. Go watch our video about him. This video is an ad for the most luxurious and exclusive music festival ever, the Fyre Festival. When Kendall Jenner posted about it, it officially became an internet phenomenon. Of course, goes viral, social media goes crazy, and millennials get their bank accounts ready to buy tickets for thousands of dollars because they do not want to miss out. Weeks go by and no one hears news of the festival production, only more marketing goodness and beauty. The day arrives and thousands of youngsters start heading to the island of the Great Exuma in the Bahamas, filled with illusions and excitement. But as they arrive, they discover the luxury villas and just everything that was promised didn't exist. In exchange, they have to fight for a tent to spend the night trapped on an island where their dreams turn into nightmares. Welcome to the company forensics for Fyre Festival. Millennial Fraudster. Let's start talking about the brain behind the Fyre Festival fraud, Billy McFarland. We have talked about some of the most iconic con artists of modern history in this show. Bernard Madoff, Elizabeth Holmes, and yes, Billy McFarland. They all have something in common, a natural talent for getting tons of money out of nothing but lies. If you watch our episodes, you'll find out that these characters don't know how to stop or take a no for an answer until they face federal justice. But back in 2013, in his early 20s, Billy McFarland was something like a New York tech bro, an ever-excited startup CEO who had raised venture capital and was chasing the next big thing. The peculiar startup that he ran back then was called Magnuses, and looking back at it, things were already sketchy by then. Magnuses was supposed to be the millennial version of the American Express Black Card, except that it wasn't a credit card. It was nothing but a cool-looking black metallic duplicate of your good old plastic so that you could swipe with style at the club or at your local Starbucks. For $250 per year, you'd get the Magnuses card and access to an exclusive community of young, beautiful business people, but also entertainment personalities all hanging out in a townhouse in West Village, New York, with free booze. The townhouse was one of the main perks initially, and they held many parties and events there. But in mid-2015, they received a $100,000 lawsuit from the landlord, claiming that his residential space had been used for commercial operations and had been trashed. The company was not growing as McFarland hoped or said, and cash was running out, so he started showing his proficiency to lie and get money. Among other hustles, let's call them, he would get quick cash from selling tickets for exclusive events that he didn't have. Naturally, reservations started being canceled up and down, customer complaints and refund demands were left unanswered, and nobody was to be held accountable. But instead of fixing the company, McFarland was already working on his next big millionaire idea, Fyre Media. By the time he met rapper Ja Rule in the townhouse parties, the two started working on Fyre as co-founders. Influencer marketing gone wrong. The Fyre Festival fraud was fully powered by social media and influencers. It ended up being nothing more than an expensive commercial featuring some of the most elite models and influencers from Instagram. In a way, that's how it all started. Billy and Ja Rule wanted to disrupt the music industry and make a cultural impact with Fyre Media, so they came up with the Fyre Festival. McFarland understood that they needed to be relevant on social media and put together one of the most infamous marketing campaigns of recent times. But he didn't do it alone. He did it by hiring the controversial marketing agency Fuck Jerry, or Jerry Media. You may remember them from the famous meme account on Instagram, now with more than 15 million followers. Yep, the one that had been widely criticized for making a lot of fame posting stolen content. They are among the first who started this thing called influencer marketing, which is just advertising your brand through people with large numbers of followers. So they got the most exclusive influencers to shoot a promotional spot for the festival. It was like the Instagram dream came to life. They posted the video 4 months from the date of the festival and took the internet by storm. The creatives at Fuck Jerry designed a post for all these influencers to upload at the same time. And the post was just an orange tile that visually disrupted regular feed posts and created much anticipation. The hashtag Fyre Festival and the video went viral immediately, but the cherry on top of this influencer madness was when they got Kendall Jenner to post about the festival. Allegedly, they paid her $250,000 for a single post to expose the event to her more than 100 million followers. The campaign reached more than 300 million people total, and naturally, tickets started selling like hotcakes. But the festival planning hadn't even started. It was all in McFarlane's head. Only a few weeks from the date of the festival, there was no island, no villas, no confirmed shows, no yachts, no catering, nothing. So the production started literally a race against time to fulfill the promises, but it was evident from the team that the whole thing was just doomed. McFarlane persisted and started running bigger hustles to get money as he burnt it. Marketing beyond good and evil. Meanwhile, the folks at Fuck Jerry kept the social media ship going until the very last moment, despite allegations that they may have been aware that the production was a disaster. Still, they kept posting quotes like, "In 4 days, you'll be dancing on the beach." All of this stuff has raised a fair question of how responsible is the marketing agency for the disaster they widely helped promote. The Jerry Media Agency has stated that they acted at the Fyre team's commands and were not involved in production on site. However, only a few days before the festival, people who had paid for tickets had many questions and turned to Fyre's social media accounts for answers. There was no clarity about transportation or hosting logistics or pretty much anything. But the guys from Fuck Jerry had instructions to delete and block anyone who made questions about the festival on their social media channel. So if that's what your client wants to do, that's what you do, right? Just delete any hater comments or questions and block those users out of your social media fantasy. Anything wrong with that? No, it's just the cool guys at Fuck Jerry. They seem to be so beyond good and evil that they even produced their film about the festival failure only a few months after it blew up. Can we call that a self-redeeming move? The Netflix documentary, Fyre, was produced by the same company that made the festival go viral in the first place and managed the social media behind the scam. Double monetization if you think about it. Some argue that the Jerry Media film portrays a lighter version of the issue, focusing on anecdotes and washing away the company's key role in the propagation of the fraud. That is much more evident when you compare that documentary to the Hulu documentary on the same topic, Fyre Fraud, which makes a deeper analysis of the responsibility of social media and marketing in these events. Now, guess which of the two documentaries got 4 Emmy nominations? Yep, the one from Jerry Media. I guess we'll have to hope the next time they worry a little more about consumers before they use their godly marketing to sell something. Fyre Festival, the shit show. Let's get back to the mess of the festival production. Before it all started falling apart, there was at least one thing that McFarlane did have for the festival: a rented private island in the Bahamas, but he got kicked out of it before anything started. Why? Just because he violated the contract terms by advertising that the narco kingpin Pablo Escobar previously owned the island, but the current owner of the island explicitly warned him not to market any relation between the island and Escobar. So, after some emergency island shopping, McFarlane managed to get an underdeveloped construction site outside of Sandals Emerald Bay Resort on an island in the Great Exuma Cays. Nothing like the aspirational private island he had sold his customers. The place was far from the paradise locations shown in the marketing materials. There was no infrastructure for electricity or plumbing, no access to the beach, and it was potentially hazardous for 1,000 of hyped up and drunk youngsters. And of course, red flags started popping up. Several contractors and employees alerted McFarlane that it was impossible to pull off such a festival in such a short amount of time with such precarious conditions. But the ship was already steaming ahead. Tickets were selling and the festival wasn't canceled when it should have been. Instead, McFarlane went back to his shady practices on a bigger scale to pay for the expenses of the rushed production. So what did he do? He started selling even more expensive tiers to the festival to get more cash. Packages included luxury villas, private yacht rides with a personal crew, VIP access to shows, meet and greets with the celebrities. None of it existed, and he was still selling it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it was still not enough. So McFarlane started incurring in full-blown wire fraud, tricking vendors, authorities, and workers with bogus money wires. He also presented investors with false documentation and an overblown company validation, managing to raise around $800K from investors. then the rest was just the inevitable course of time and what many workers on the festival site had described as a shit show. The luxury villas ended up being FEMA disaster relief tents that got all soaked because the night before the festival there was a storm. By the time the first festival goers arrived, the crew was still setting up the stage. Tents and mattresses were all over the place getting dried under the sun. Trucks coming and going with cargo and some kiosks full of boxes with liquor. Planes with hundreds of attendees arrived and more people were hanging around waiting for accommodation, but it would never happen. So at one point, McFarland stood on a table and just instructed the masses to grab the first available tent they could. What followed must have been some nightmare material, hordes of drunk and mad people fighting for a tent to spend the night in a pitch black location outdoors, surrounded by cliffs without water or toilets. The next day, as people started escaping the island in the first plane they could, Fyre would send them an email. It said that day one had a rough start, but the rest of the festival would be the advertised adventure. McFarland was still trying to save the ship with more lies, but no one believed it at this point. After the scandal blew in the media, the guy was arrested and soon was bailed out for $300,000. But he couldn't resist himself and shortly after went back to scamming people. Under the name of New York City VIP Pass, he and a new associate would target the festival email list and sell tickets for exclusive events. Does that sound familiar? Yes, it was the same scam that he had been doing since the early days of Magnus's. But soon, he got busted again, and in early 2019 faced a sentence of 6 years in prison for wire fraud. Experts considered that he was still young, and therefore, the sentence was reasonably short, so we should expect to hear from him again in the future. So what do you think? Do you think he'll come clean out of jail, or is fraud sort of in his DNA? One thing that you have to give him is his ability to convince people with his pitch. I have no idea how he does it, because I know for a fact that he is not our customer. But if you want to have a set of incredibly looking slides for your pitch, you should check out Slidebean Agency. We have built a team that takes any presentation from investor decks to sales decks, marketing pitches, and converts it into a stunning slide deck for just $29 per slide. If you need help with the writing, we can also help with that. So just visit us at slidebean.com/agency to learn more. We'll see you next week.